continuing production of The Open Mind has been made possible by grants from Ann Olnick, Joan Ganz Cooney, the Angelson Family Foundation, Alfred P. Sloan Foundation, the John S. and James L. Knight Foundation, JoAnn and Kenneth Wellner Foundation, and from the corporate community, Mutual of America.
I'm Alexander Heffner, your host on The Open Mind. A one-man brain trust to the likes of Jay-Z, Kendrick Lamar, Mary J. Blige, and Destiny's Child, Grammy Award-winning producer, DJ, lecturer, and social activist, Ninth Wonder, born Patrick Denard Douthit, joins me today. Ninth is a professor at North Carolina Central University and Duke University, most recently a hip-hop fellow at Harvard University. A musical impresario, the DJ is both old and new school, committed to the creation and legacy of a hip-hop archive. The Hip Hop Fellow documentary chronicles Ninth Wonder's journey as a practitioner scholar from the studio to the classroom. Based in Raleigh, North Carolina, Ninth founded It's a Wonderful World music group, Jamla Records, an independent label. From R&B to neo-soul, rhythm and blues, fresh and retro. Today we explore the wonderful world of music with Ninth, and as a one-time student of the Harvard Music Department, I'm really delighted to have him here.
How you doing, man?
Thanks, Ninth, for doing this. It's a long time coming, right?
Right. Absolutely. Finally got it done.
What's going on with the archive?
The archive lives in the Hutchins Center. And inside the Hutchins Center is the W. Du Bois Institute that's ran by Henry Louis Gates, Dr. Henry Louis Gates, Harvard University, and Dr. Marcy Morgan. Dr. Marcy Morgan runs the Hip Hop Fellows Program inside of the Harvard Fellows Program, right? So within that, we wanted to try to place hip hop in the canon. And that means creating what a standard is or what classics is, because we haven't really decided what they are yet. So we chose, or I chose, 200 albums. Don't ask me why. I tried to do it, but as painstaking as it was, I chose 200 albums, and we're admitting every year maybe 4, then 10, then 20. And the first 4 that we did was Nas's Illmatic, Kendrick Lamar's To Pimp a Butterfly, A Tribe Called Quest, Low End Theory, and Miseducation of Lauryn Hill by Lauryn Hill. To kind of show the range of hip hop, what it sounded like. It shows a range of age when it comes to the artist. So just trying to place hip hop in the canon and create what the standards is, and so we can carry on so the next generation would know exactly what the rubric of hip hop is.
What was the rubric of the classic? When you think of classic hip hop,
right?
How did you arrive at that definition?
You know, these days, a lot of times music is based on, record sales and, now it's Instagram followers, right? But, I try to base it on simply creative license, creative ideas. Does it stand the test of time? It didn't have to sell a lot. A classic is not a platinum seller sometimes. It may have been important to that region. It may have been important to the time. It may have been important to a group of people or culture of people. So that's why it ranges from a Kendrick Lamar's To Pump a Butterfly all the way down to a Deltron 3030. Like it's across the board, across the strata of what we kind of look at in a mainstream sense of what hip hop is. Because like I said, we always define those by, oh, it went platinum, or the first week sales. Hip hop is much deeper than that when it stands in the pantheon of music, I believe.
To what extent was this a hip hop Hall of Fame? To what extent was it something deeper that was getting at economic, political, social challenges that the community of artists who made this music faced and continue to face.
That's the toughest thing, because trying to get everyone to understand outside the culture of hip hop what this thing actually means, or what the culture actually means, or what we're actually trying to say. You know, mass media can kind of get that misconstrued. People can get that misconstrued through mass media. So, you know, this way we'll be able to tell our story the correct way. We'll be able to tell our story from, you know, these are the major players in it. These are the major poets in it. These are the producers in it. All the way down to the mastering ideas of the album, all the way down to the mixes, all the way down to the artwork. They all mean something in the pantheon of music. So doing this kind of sets that up so people can finally understand, instead of just going through just a vacuum of mass media.
I should have said in the intro, professor of history, because that's really what you are.
Right.
You're a hip-hop historian.
Right.
So you take miseducation, for instance.
Right.
Being that was among the 4 to graduate in your inaugural class.
Right.
Can you give our viewers a sense of how that fit into an opening definition of what hip-hop is, so that folks who listen to Lauryn Hill or the media's popular depiction of Lauryn Hill is not misconstrued and comes at that genuine definition of here is hip-hop?
Well, the beauty about Lauryn Hill was and still is the beauty of a woman. Honesty. Like brutal honesty, whether you're ready for it or not. And with Lauryn Hill, she did that on miseducation. You know, for those that don't know, it comes from the book by Carter G. Woodson, Miseducation of a Negro. And just to take that particular instance, to bring it forward, not only bringing ideas of sampling forward, now we're bringing ideas of books forward, bringing those forward and then turning it into the views from a woman. Because hip-hop is a male-dominated industry, as always has been, but she took that particular sense and made it hers and brought beauty to hip-hop. Hip-hop was never looked at as a beautiful thing or a warm sense or a warm feeling. The miseducation did that, and she told a story not only through the gift of rhyme, but through the gift of singing. And it was important, especially in these day and times, that we have that particular female voice.
Was it enduring enough as you look at these next albums that are entering that idea that this can be a, if not gender neutral,
right,
a multifaceted gendered idea of what hip hop can be?
Not only multifaceted in gender, multifaceted in race and culture. You know, we have, you know, it's been this thing for a very long time that some people outside of the people of color, and we're speaking about brown and black people, you know, we're African descent, Latino descent, you know, some people feel like if you didn't come from a certain neighborhood that you're not supposed to be there. You're not supposed to understand what hip hop is. Hip hop is one of those, it's probably the one music art form, new music art form that combines not only the aspect of culture, but color, you know. You know, I travel around the world a lot, and I DJ different places, and you know, no matter if I'm black or this person is of Caucasian descent, whether this person is French or from wherever, we all know the words of Wu-Tang Clan, and I think that's the beauty of hip hop, that we're just as universal as math, you know, in this particular sense. So that is what we definitely wanted to display in this particular list, to make sure that people that's not of color, people that's not of a quote of the struggle or social economic background, because some people believe that you only are supposed to listen to hip hop if you come from a certain background, and you must come from a place of destitute or something like that. That's not what all the hip hop is, and we wanted to show that throughout this particular list as well.
When you see people's reaction as a DJ, they're already entranced, right? So
Right.
The library's posture is to invite people into an immersion that can have value irrespective of your faith, your color, whatever. And I'm wondering how's that going? I mean, can we without denying hip hop its authenticity,
Right.
draw in the appeal that crosses those barriers?
I think this is, this is the first generation to do so. Well, our particular generation was the first, Generation X, and this is all happening after desegregation. Desegregation did a lot, in education, but it also did a lot in music, right? And if we talk about desegregation in the late 60s, early 70s, if we take it all the way up to the birth of MTV, music television, once we start to get there, then now the idea of music reaching a different amounts of people is now broadened, right? The one thing MTV did for me was it introduced me to the Police and Duran Duran and Bananarama. And, I didn't see my first quote unquote face of color on MTV until like 1982, 1983, right? So I think when I DJ like my class reunion or I do parties called 95 Live where we play, 70s, 80s, and 90s music. When I play a Guns N' Roses record, I'm not only speaking to somebody who you think should be listening to Guns N' Roses, I'm also speaking to every kid that was in 8th grade when Appetite for Destruction was released, right? If I play a DOS Effects record, They Want Effects, I'm not speaking to me or somebody think that I would listen to that. I'm also speaking to every kid that listened to the urban hip hop station in Winston-Salem, North Carolina at the time. And I see that every time I go home and I DJ for my class. I'm looking at my classmates and, I graduated from Robert B. Glenn High School in Winston-Salem. And my class is half and half. It is half 49% black and 51% white. And what I play, we all love, because we're the first generation that absorbed it all. We're not just a rock generation. We're not just a hip hop generation. We grew up listening to everything because the way mass media was set up, we had to.
I know. That's really the sad situation with mass media today, is that you can turn on MTV and not find a music video across that spectrum.
Right.
Sting, Jay-Z, just throw it all in there. And the same thing as SportsCenter. What is SportsCenter today? It's this. This has a different design and application, half hour. I mean, I yearn for that day with sport. You could turn on, and I know because we follow each other on Twitter.
Right.
It's like, I want the highlights.
Right.
I mean, but everyone's getting it on their smartphone, and that's the business justification for why they don't just play the highlights anymore.
Right.
I'm riffing a little, but which is only to say that I want people to visit the hip hop archive in the way they would the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
Right.
Not just get a taste or a snippet, because I think the taste and snippet leads people to misconstrue. Think about miseducation. We want people to be fully absorbed in it. What is the timetable for widening the reach of the archive at Harvard?
It's going to be we're going to try to do this thing like every year. Like just as we would do a Rock and Roll Hall of Fame or even I'm a sports fan just like you, even like a Major League Baseball Hall of Fame or an NBA Hall of Fame or an NFL. We want to admit people every year and keep it going all the way until the wheels fall off. Because now we're in a situation of, some of our greatest poets and greatest minds of hip hop are still alive. Unfortunately, we just lost Prodigy of Mobb Deep, which is, definitely a sad situation. And we're learning the mortality of hip hop as well because, growing up, you think that you can live forever. Especially hip hop is looked at as a young art form. But now our greatest minds in hip hop are in their 40s, right? But we're admitting people every year. Not only are we admitting the album, say, for example, we want to admit Paid in Full by Eric B. and Rakim, which we will. We want to be able to bring Rakim and Eric B. to Harvard and take the actual pieces of vinyl, because you always need two, right? Take the actual pieces of vinyl and have them place it in the archive themselves and make a ceremony out of it. I think that's the way we have to do it to institutionalize this thing, to make sure that it stands on and it lives beyond record sales. Because we are living in a dying music industry. We have to have something that's going to keep this thing permanent.
Right, permanence of meaning and consequence.
Right.
To that end, do you think that hip hop is not political enough today?
Hip hop has always took a turn for the way of who was actually in office as president. If you look at, when we as hip hoppers feel like we're pressed against the wall or backed against the wall, we do our best, right? And hip hop, people in hip hop, we span the idea of people that are trying to get ahead or feel like they're oppressed. Like it's not a color thing. And so it seems like every time we feel like we're oppressed, our music gets better, it seems like. So the Kendrick Lamar album couldn't come on at a better time. Chance the Rapper couldn't come along at a better time. Because now we don't have it as great as we had with certain people in office, right? So now we feel like that we need some source of inspiration because music has always been the voice of revolution. If we talk about Haight-Ashbury in the 1960s, all the way up to now, it's always been the voice of revolution. That's the message has always been a part of it. So it seems like we feel like our backs is pressed against the wall, that we feel like that we need a music or a soundtrack to push us forward. So we have our Kendricks, we have our Chance the Rappers, we have our Rhapsodies, we have our Joey Badasses, we have, several people that has a voice that wants to say something instead of it being just a party.
Chance really has been maybe the more or most political, admirably so. Does that counterbalance what seems to be Kanye's Trump Tower appearance? Maybe he was just having a personal meltdown, which was reported in the news. But right, but his seeming to prostitute himself to Trump in the way that he did. Well, maybe it was just a stare into space. I don't know.
Who knows?
Who knows what it was?
Who knows?
But it seemed to betray some of his beginnings.
Exactly what we stand for. Absolutely. With Chance the Rapper, there's not only a political edge, there's also a spiritual and religious edge to it. Also with this last Kendrick Lamar album, it was the same thing. Venturing off into a place that a lot of people, again, think that hip hop can't go. It can't be. People actually still look at hip hop as not the genius art form that it is. That we're not able to go exactly where we want to go with this thing, especially with the words and the message. And I think Chance proved that wrong. He proved it wrong on so many levels. He proved it wrong on a situation of I can be spiritual, I can be religious, I can be political.
I can be governor of Illinois.
I can be governor of Illinois.
Don't you think?
I can sell out Comiskey Park. Right. I can get involved in,
One of those things hasn't happened yet for our viewers.
Right, yeah, right. He's not, people at home.
I can see folks Googling.
Is he the governor of Illinois?
Chance for governor.
Right. Hopefully one day they will. But, him selling out Comiskey Park and him getting involved in the violence in Chicago. Right. Him getting involved in it, which nobody talks about. Everybody likes to talk about the violence, but nobody's talking about the countless hip hoppers and rappers that's getting involved in trying to stop this thing. So
I think what you're saying is there is an element of politics that is animating hip hop right now.
Absolutely.
But is it movement making?
I think it is. It's movement making for Chance because Chance is doing this as an independent artist.
Right.
He's doing this without backing from a major label, as we would like to say. He won Best New Artist at the Grammys. It was like that was a victory for a lot of people that feel like they needed a big machine to make their move, to make a voice or to have a voice. Chance is doing that on a level of, with so many tentacles, like religious, spiritual, political, right? Kendrick, same thing, religious, spiritual, political, and speaking of unification, right? Kendrick is the highest selling rap album this year, right? If we look back maybe 2 or 3 years ago, political rap doesn't sell, right? But he's changing that narrative, kind of taking it back to the times where Public Enemy, It Takes a Nation of Millions to Hold Us Back, sold 2 million copies to a 7th grader like me, right? So at that time. So it's going back to that time. It's slowly going back to that time, but it's going to take a while.
When you think of Jay-Z, do you think that he could have exploited his clout for the sort of a political cause more than he chose to?
With hip hop, if we're speaking about Jay-Z, just as we're speaking about Nelly, the thing about Nelly was, and I'll get back to Jay-Z in a second. The thing about Nelly was, he made a few, videos that was not to everybody's liking, but that became more of a story that all of the research he did and all of the money he raised for leukemia research, right? Same thing with Jay-Z. We don't look at the idea of what he's done for the Khalif Browder story. We don't look at the idea of what he's done for, he just bailed out dads for Father's Day recently. We don't look at all of the behind the scene things that he's done. Because sometimes, in this particular music industry, the things that you do behind closed doors, you do that for a reason behind closed doors. It doesn't mean it doesn't get done. We didn't find out that, Prince was doing the things he was doing until he passed on. And so I think that'll be the situation with the Jay-Z, or with anybody with that particular standpoint, because once you help one, you have to help everyone. So I think he's meticulous when it comes to who he helps, how he helps, and how much he helps. And he doesn't, although he's known for talking about money and records and what I have this and what that, him helping people, I think he keeps that to himself. I'm not here to flaunt me helping people. I mean, Robin Hood didn't. Robin Hood just went and did what he did, by stories, by legend. So I think he's the same way. I help people the way I want to help people. I don't feel like I have to flaunt it. I don't feel like to tell the world. And same thing with Beyonce. She feels like she doesn't have to tell the world, but you see the effects afterwards. You see the effects down the road.
But has it been a lasting effect in terms of the reputation of hip hop?
I think if you look at what we've done since 1973, that's the quote unquote banner year when we, started, or the culture started. I think we've done a lot of outstanding things when it comes to the ideas of education, raising money, the jobs that has been created because Jay-Z is where he is or who he is. Like, you have to look at all of the jobs he created for some people that might have went downtown to try to get a job and couldn't get one. He's not the only one that's at that stature that has helped a lot of people that's under him, right? Or same thing for Beyonce, giving a job to her whole band is female. Giving a job to a woman who might have been a great bassist who couldn't become a bassist in another band because that particular band didn't want to hire a woman as a bassist, right? She hired an entire band of women. That says a lot. I think we've done a lot in those places, but I think it leans on the audience because no matter what we do, no matter how we do it, no matter if I am at Harvard, at Penn, at UVA, at Central, at Duke, and in the Smithsonian, involved with the Smithsonian, there are some people that are still going to look at hip hop the way they do. The same way they still looked at Obama the way he did. No matter what he did, no matter the great things he's done, there's some people that still just going to look at him because of his skin color. And they're not going to be able to look past it. So no matter what we do, no matter how much of a global effect that we have, no matter how much money Akon raises in his homeland of Senegal, no matter what we do, people will still look at hip hop as this underserved, under this low-seated genre of music instead of the genius that it is and the ground that it covers.
Well, look, you're making a persuasive argument that it is genius, and you
Right.
have. So I hope there are still believers out there, or
course.
soon to be believers, but you're presenting, frankly, the reality.
Right.
Which leads us to kind of the final terrain that I had to explore with you, being a music junkie, and that is, so are there folks who listen to we were talking off camera, the big man, smooth styling vocals, right? The Pendergrasses and the Vandrosses,
Right.
the Whites. Are there folks out there who would listen to those artists but not hip hop? If there's a bridge to hip hop from those artists, how do you get there?
In my I had to do a colloquium in front of Henry Louis Gates at Harvard during my time as a hip hop fellow. My whole idea was to get the attention of Henry Louis Gates because he's not a big proponent of hip hop music at all. But my thing was, how can I get him to understand my world, or what the use of sampling old records? How can I get him to understand that? And it's exactly what it was. I played a record called Ashley's Roach Clip by the Soul Searchers. That's a 1974 song, but it was also used by Eric B. and Rakim's Paid in Full. So the bridge is actually the sounds in the background.
The sampling, the covers.
Absolutely. That you know, you might not, as a 60-year-old man or woman, you might not like Jay-Z's Heart of the City. You can't, you know, deal with that, you know, the words. It might not be your thing.
Right.
But you can deal with the Bobby Bland version of
Right.
the song. And that's the bridge. You know, sampling is the 100% bridge. Because then when I sample, I'm sampling a group or a group of musicians. I take that, I introduce it to a new audience, which is an 18-year-old or a 17-year-old or a 22-year-old. That particular artist I made the beat for, they take that particular beat that I made and play it live. So it's a circle. It goes from a live band to my beat machine back to a live band. That is a way that a bridge can be created, that a 60-year-old can understand what an 18-year-old, because when I play a record, it's going to come from two different directions. They're going to say, oh, that's I'm in Love by Nancy Wilson. Somebody my age might say, oh, no, that's Honey by Erykah Badu, because that's the bridge. Nancy Wilson is the bridge, or that song is the bridge that joins the generations together.
My hope, Ninth, is that just as there was that connection to those vocalists I mentioned, you know, that has been enduring, that your work will prove an enduring connection to Lauryn Hill and the other hip-hop greats.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ninth.
Absolutely.
And thanks to you in the audience. I hope you join us again next time for a thoughtful excursion into the world of ideas. Until then, keep an open mind. Please visit the Open Mind website at 13.org/openmind to view this program online or to access over 1,500 other interviews. And do check us out on Twitter and Facebook at Open Mind TV for updates on future programming.
Continuing production of The Open Mind has been made possible by grants from Ann Olnick, Joan Ganz Cooney, the Angelson Family Foundation, Alfred P. Sloan Foundation, the John S. and James L. Knight Foundation, JoAnn and Kenneth Wellner Foundation, with special thanks to the Schumann Media Center for additional support, and to the corporate community Mutual of America.